crafty friends, welcome back. This is Jenny from Polly's Paper Studio. Today I am crafting sweet and simple style with these oh so charming snowman images from the Snowfall Collection from Authentique. And here is that collection. So it has such sweet plaids, of course I love those, and vintage pattern papers and images. Here's just that 6x6 pad so you can see how nice all of this goes together. So stick with me and we will make these cards together. So this first card is an A2 size. It is a landscape orientation and it opens like a book. And the reason I had to do this was to fit the die cuts in how I wanted. So I have finished the inside with the coordinating pattern paper and a small section to leave a sentiment. So I'm going to build this card, and here's another thing I normally don't do is use craft colored cardstock as my border, but I just thought that it went so well with the homespun whimsical patterns and images, so I thought that was going to be a great choice. I have my pattern paper cut, and rather than having my full border all the way around, I've got my strip running all the way across so that I leave room for my die cuts. I did already add some faux snow and allowed that to dry, so that's just a fun dimensional element that is a nice accent for Christmas cards. And then I also added a small border strip, you see it's not very wide, of mirrored cardstock in a pretty silver color. So I want to get this lined up, centered top to bottom, and like I said, it's going to go all the way across, so I don't have to worry about the side border. I've cut my piece of vellum, once again using an item that I don't normally use, and I cut out the center because I want to have the adhesive from the next layer help me to adhere this and keep it well adhered to the card base. So I also put a fair amount of adhesive on that vellum as well, where it was going to be hidden underneath the next pattern paper layer. So even though this is a sweet and simple card, it does have a couple of extra layers just for accent, and these are not dimensional, so this will be an easy card to get in an envelope and put in the mail. So that's going straight across again, all the way to the side, and you can see how that just sort of neutralizes a small bit of that background pattern. Now my next items are going to be these very sweet die cut snowflakes, and I'm just going to attach them to the back of my next pattern paper layer because that will be a good way to secure a fragile, delicate piece of paper. And also there is more faux snow on this layer, so I'm building up those details, but I'm not adding loads of dimension like foam spacers. I've also got a quick little sentiment. This comes from the die cut sheet where I got my snowman images, and this is just going to be adhered before I add this layer, and it kind of gets sandwiched in between. So this will be on top of the vellum and underneath that faux snow. Here's my first snowflake. I've cut two because I want them to balance, and I'm going to add that right where that center portion of the snowflake will be covered by the edge of the pattern paper. So that just sticks out a little bit over halfway. And then I've got a second one here for the bottom. There's a fair bit of adhesive, so it's sticking to my hand a little, but I think it will be worth it when your vellum stays in place nicely and won't shift around. So here are those snowflakes added before the pattern paper strip, and this one's just going to go right down the center again, so it's just side to side, and it is going to secure those snowflakes in place. Did you see? There was quite a bit of adhesive here in the center. Because I cut that vellum out, it will definitely help to hold all of those layers in place. So there is the center strip, and you can see it's quite linear. Here are my images. Now these came from that die cut sheet. There's 3 that are the same shape and size, so I knew that they would line up and be a cool graphic element if I used all of them. And because I have the blue tab top label here, I'm going to just add this red one in the center. If you don't press them down too hard right at first, you get a bit of time to adjust. I've got these up on spacers so that I get 1 layer of dimension, but it really adds a lot of detail, I think, and sets apart these sweet little images. So here's the last one, and that blue one, see, is now balanced by the label, and I'm gonna sort of just visually check to see that I have them all lined up. It helps that they have points on the ends so that you can see that they're spaced well and are level. So that is all for my first Sweet and Simple Snowman card. On to the second card now. This is also an A2 size, and I have finished it with the coordinating pattern paper on the inside and left a small section for a sentiment to be added. Originally, when I began cutting my layers for this card, I had just red, and I felt that that was maybe just a little too stark. So I went back in and I added a dove gray cardstock, and that sort of helps to coordinate with the gray of the pattern paper. So this is having a double border, 1/8 of an inch spacing, as I do. And my first pattern paper is that gray. It has a subtle snowflake pattern, and it comes from the 6x6 paper pad. So it is the same pattern, but just a much smaller scale. And now you can see how that gray helps to bridge the contrast of the red and the white. This is a portion of a corner of one of the 12x12 pattern papers, and that is the one that I got the snowman from. I just absolutely love vintage sheet music, and this one has printed with beautiful Christmas foliage, and so I just sort of cut a fairly random piece. Here is that second pattern paper, and I'm going to use this as a border at the bottom, and that will help to disguise that funny cut edge. And now I have a base for the next layer, so I'm going to bring in a beautiful mirror cardstock instead of the gray cardstock, and that will act as my second border. And I'm just going to kind of center that again and stick it down so that my beautiful sheet music isn't covered too much. Now we're back to that 6x6 paper pad, and this is sort of a newsprinty pattern with red and white, but it is not so very contrasting that it looks busy. I'm using it as a neutral in this instance. And then I've got another one of those beautiful die cut snowflakes, and I'm gonna begin adding some more layers here. I've got some dovetail cut banner shapes that are stitched on the edge, and you see I'm just using that to sort of hold that snowflake in place where I want it. And then I've got 2 more patterns of the smaller pattern paper, and I cut those into smaller dovetails. So let's add these here as well. And then here is that gorgeous snowman. I'm just gonna hold it in place here temporarily while I add the next snowflake. And once again, that adhesive on the back of this image is going to hold that snowflake in place. So I'll just sort of hold it there with my hand while I position this where I want it, and then add that right about there. Isn't he just so charming with his little top hat? Here is another image. This is from the die cut sheet as well, and it's just a small circle with a smaller snowflake pattern printed right on. And that is going to go here. And then last but not least, for my paper patterns, I have this sentiment again from the die cut sheet. I was really able to take advantage of that to get lots of details and layers that are flat. So this is going to be an easy to mail card. And so here's my sentiment. It's just going to offset a little. And I put a very small thin spacer on one side because there is a fair bit of bulk to this pattern paper over here, and I want this to be flat. Okay, a few last details are going to be some small silver sequins, and I'm taking that cue from the mirrored cardstock. I think that this is just going to add a little bit of extra sparkle and detail. So I've got two that are the medium size. This collection had three. One of them is quite giant. So I left that one behind, and I'm gonna do two medium and two of the small. So here is my last sequin, and that is all for card 2. Here are both of those sweet and simple snowman cards I created with the Snowfall Collection from Authentique Paper, and I did a pretty good job at keeping the layers in the dimension to a minimum for these, which is a big step for Ginny in her crafting journey, and I am learning as I go along, and I hope that you have got some inspiration from these cards to create something that is sweet and simple as well. If you check the description, you will find a link to the Snowfall Collection from Authentique Paper, as well as our social media sites, so check those out. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment. And if you're not already, I would love for you to subscribe. As always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye!